In mathematics, we very often use variables, and one of the reasons we do that is to give a name to a particular number or mathematical object so that we can refer to it without having to write out its definition. You can do the same thing in Python, which is the subject of this video. So let's create a variable whose name is a and whose value is 10. To do that in Python, you just type a equals 10. When we run this cell, there's no output, but having run it, every time we use the name a, it's going to refer to the value 10. So for example, in a plus 1, because a refers to 10, when I run this cell, the result will be 11. In the next cell, we've got 2 lines, which is something we've not seen before. If you have a code cell with multiple lines, then all that happens is Python will run the first line, then the second line, and so on. So the first line will create a new variable whose name is b and whose value is 20. And the second line will do a plus b. Now, because a refers to 10 and b refers to 20, the result will be 30. You can change the value that a name refers to. If you want a to refer to 20 instead of 10, you can just run a similar variable assignment with a equals 20. If I run this next cell, then from now on, a will be 20 instead of 10. You can also create variables by referring to other variables. So in the next cell, c is going to be a name for a variable which has the value of b plus 5. Now b was 20, so when I run this cell, c will refer to the value 25. So finally, let's work out what a plus b plus c refers to. A was changed to 20, b was also 20, and c was 25, so the result here will be 65. Let's think about the rules for Python variable names. So in mathematics, we usually use single character variable names. And we do this partially because we want to interpret something like xy as meaning x times y. Now in Python you can't do that. If you want to multiply 2 numbers together, you must always use the multiplication symbol, so the asterisk or star. The advantage of this is that in Python, variable names can be as long as you like. So you can use them in a descriptive way. So you can give a variable a name which describes the contents it holds, and that can help make your code easier to understand. So for example, I'm going to create a variable which is called nearly underscore pi, and that's going to refer to the value 3.141592. So when you see this variable used in some complicated formula later on, or some complicated expression, then you can see from its name what it's going to be referring to. So the official rules for Python variable names are as follows. The characters you're allowed to use are lowercase or uppercase English letters, digits 0 up to 9, and the underscore, which is this character here, which I used in my variable nearly underscore pi. Those are the only characters that you're allowed to use in Python variable names. The only other rule is that your variable name cannot start with a digit. So as another example, capital A, capital B, capital C, 1, 2, 3 is another legitimate Python variable name. So when I run this cell, it now refers to the value 7. So just to check that those 2 things worked, let's try adding them up, and the result will be 10.141592. Okay, let's look at another situation where variables are useful. At the end of the previous video, we solved a quadratic. We worked out the roots of, or at least one root of a particular quadratic equation. And when we wrote out the expression for the root of that quadratic equation, we had to use the numbers, the coefficients in the quadratic equation everywhere in that formula for the root, which made the formula actually a little bit difficult to read because you couldn't work out what was one of the numbers coming from the formula itself and what were the actual coefficients. So here what we're going to do is define 3 variables a and b and c, which hold the quadratic term, the linear term, and the constant term in our quadratic equation. So a will be 2, b will be 5, c will be 2, because our quadratic equation was 2x squared plus 5x plus 2 equals 0. Then we can define 2 variables to refer to the 2 roots of this quadratic. So root underscore plus will be the root in which you use the positive sign, and root underscore minus will be the root in which you use the negative sign. Again, you can see that these variable names are going to be helpful to us because when we use these in future, you can see that root plus should be referring to one of the roots of this quadratic, in fact the root where you used the plus sign. So let's run this code cell. It's now defined 5 new variables, and the 2 we're going to use are called root plus and root minus. Let's check that this worked. So to check that this worked, I'm going to substitute root plus and root minus into my quadratic. So I should do 2 times root plus squared plus 5 times root plus 2. If this has worked, then I should get the answer 0, and I do. Okay, so let's do the same thing again for root minus. If I run it, I get 0 again. That's great. Okay, so that's how we create numeric variables in Python. The last thing I want to say is that Python variables can have many different types. They don't just have to refer to numbers. We're going to learn all about this later, but just to show you 2 quick examples, Python variables could, for example, refer to some text. So here is a variable which refers to the text hello, or they can refer to lists of things. So here is a Python variable which refers to the list of the 3 numbers 1, 2, and 3. We'll learn all about these different types of Python variables later.